Hello, gamers. Welcome back to the documentation stream. Yeah, that's why I start with the start streaming how's it called, scene in OBS. Otherwise, yeah. Oh, welcome. This time I didn't have any Spotify accident with the random blasting of some copyrighted music. Oh. I hope everyone is having a good week. I went to bed very late last night because I had to finish writing my slides for LCA. By finish writing, I mostly mean I had to take a bunch of screenshots and then publish, add them to the slide deck, which is always fun because you have to resize everything with the right aspect ratio and everything else so they fit inside the screen. Luckily, we are doing a presentation, an online conference, so the presentation is going to be streaming from my screen, which means I don't have to care about projectors. Projectors are usually the weakest link inside the entire endeavor of giving a presentation. I still remember when we had to connect everything and then say out loud 3 times, "The power of Keith compels you," to get projectors to work with Linux. It's always fun. Oh. Oh. But yeah, going to bed late means waking up completely groggy, and instead of getting some tea this time, I'm bringing out the big guns, and I went for an entire pot of coffee. I usually try to use an espresso but drink an espresso in the morning, but this time it wasn't enough at all. But that means I'm fairly caffeinated and I am ready to begin working on the beginner's tutorial. Today I wanted to finish the entry page so that we can start merging the existing work and then improve on top of that. And yeah, the entry is basically the last big widget that is useful for creating an application. We went through simple structural elements like windows and boxes, and then we added images, labels, and buttons. But now it's time for user input entries, so we will have something there. An entry is not a big widget. We kind of reduced most of its scope in GTK 4, luckily. So not only GTK entry is a leaf widget, but most of its functionality has been moved to GTK text, which is the actual text entry widget. It's the thing that listens to your keyboard input and displays text. But it has no styling, for instance. Or it has minimal styling. What you do is put a GTK text inside another widget. At that point, you can build complex text entry UI components. Like we've seen GTK password entry, which is not a GTK entry at all. Is a leaf widget that includes the GTK text. In order to make that work, we have editable interface, which already existed in GTK 3, but it's been revamped and improved in GTK 4. And then what you do is you implement that editable interface in your outer widget, and you bridge the implementation into GTK text. So you delegate all the text editing stuff from the outer widget to the inner widget. And it kind of works. It works well enough that it's a good compromise between having text entries and having the ability to create your own text entries, your own complex text entries. For instance, if we want to add a widget that supports entering text but also has controls around it, like icon buttons or I don't know, text tags, for instance, then you can simply use GTK text without having to inherit from a complex widget like GTK entry. Instead, you can use widgets inside it. The entry was kind of complicated. The GTK entry widget was kind of complicated because it had to draw the text directly, but also had to draw everything else as images, for instance. And that was hard to deal with, especially with subclasses. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have tags when you are writing a password entry, for instance. Yeah, let's move to the desktop and start working on the entry widget. So what we want to do for an basic beginner's tutorial for GTK4 is, for the GTK entry widget, is to outline how to add your own entry, listen to things like the user press return, so activated the widget, and how to deal with some of the tweaks that you can do to a GTK entry. But again, we kind of simplified the entire thing for a reason, so it shouldn't be extremely complicated. So for first thing first, we have to go to the components page and go to the entries, text entries section. We do this. We add a new page, and then we go down and we add entry first here. At which point we can, as usual, add a new file. We go back to the template. Let me close a couple of files here. Select everything and then copy it into the new page. Okay. Then we should be going here. And we can go on the API reference for GTK. And we look for entry. I recently had to describe how the new documentation website works, and one of the things that I kind of stressed was that you can, whenever you search here, you're not sending your search anywhere else. It's all client side, so it works on your computer. The index is downloaded whenever you open a page, and then you just search inside it using JavaScript, which means that in order to view the GTK website, the GTK documentation website, you need to have JavaScript enabled. So you cannot be completely JavaScript free. But unlike many other websites, the JavaScript is licensed, and it's all MIT licensed, so it's all free JavaScript. So you can literally use it, and there is no weird licensing issue. Of course, it's not going to be a useful distinction for most people, but I know a bunch of people that care about this stuff. The old documentation website used to send your queries to Google and come back with the results, because implementing a search engine is not trivial. But both the documentation website for GTK for the API references and the new developer documentation website for GNOME use client-side search and client-side indices. So the queries never leave your computer. That is not entirely true, because we send, like, if you do this, the URL gets modified, but the URL gets modified and then it's modified locally as well. Unless you literally entered this, because this entire section here is generated from the URL. It's not, it's all locally generated. To be fair, one of the things that I'd like to get is some form of feedback for the online. I think we discussed this ages ago. Well, not ages ago, a few days ago, a few streamers ago. Adding the ability to give feedback to the API reference and the documentation website. Oh, hi, Shadow Coins. I don't read Japanese. I'm very, very sorry. But yeah, I was wondering how to add some form of feedback for the online websites, for the online version of the websites, not for the local stuff that you can see using DevHelp. Mostly because I really like people to give feedback on the documentation. It's the only way we can have an idea of how to deal with documentation issues outside of bug reports. And the bug reports are most of the time not really useful. So outside of the API reference, we need to go into the HIG. So controls, we should have an entry. here. So let's go and copy this. Okay. We should copy this and then go into the, how's it called? Where is it? There we go. We should go here and copy the URL. So we link directly, and then we also add immediately the link to GDK entry. So we already are set for these two. It's the trivialist thing to do. Okay, so we should go here. Oh, where did he go? Why did he move to the other? I rearranged my workspaces, probably my displays, and the end result is that windows were moved all around. I typically use the workspaces with the same activity, so I don't have to move around too much. Okay. So these are the guidelines here. This one is it's a good start actually for the description. Yeah, it doesn't need to be fancy or complicated. It just needs to get the immediate job done. Because the complexities are moved into the API reference and the interface guidelines. We just need to say what it is and what it does very simply and plainly, so that we can then add complexity, for instance, to the section, to various sections, and the useful methods. Yeah, you can see how complicated it can be an entry as a widget. It has the ability to set the character visibility, so passwords, but we also have a password entry that is meant specifically for that. It has a progress indicator as well, when in reality it should be a separate widget, like a progress entry, instead of being an entry with a progress bar inside it. And the fact that you can set icons around it, it's also not really what you want. You want a custom widget with a GTK text and icons around it, which is how GTK entry implements it anyway, but you don't want it to be part of the entry type, entry widget, because it complicates the entire thing. But yeah, for instance, this one is a good, these two are actually good things to add as useful API, but they do not warrant an entire section, like the input ints here and the input purpose. So you have a GTK entry and you need to say, please do not spell check the content of this stuff, or do not do like do not deal with on-screen keyboard, or please do not allow emojis, for instance. It's in a password entry. A password entry should not have emojis. I'm definitely sure that somebody will pop up and say, oh, but I want to have emojis in my password, because then it's super secure, right? Which is, yeah, no, doesn't work that way. In reality, all of these, yeah, yeah, famous last words, definitely. In reality, all of these are hints, and they're not hints for the actual toolkit. They are hints for the input method mechanism. So every time you start typing, we actually have to send the input to another. We might send the input to another process. For instance, if you have a keyboard with a Western keyboard, but you're using an input for Japanese, for instance, or Chinese, then we do the translation inside that other component that's usually out of process. And that mechanism has to know what kind of input you're entering. So you can say everything that goes into it is gonna have uppercase words, for instance, and the input method will then deal with that and say, okay, I will present to the user possible completions, possible values that only include uppercase words. And this stuff it cannot be automated, because it has to do with what the application developer wants the input field to be for. So we provide these hints to say, if you're using an input method that does, for instance, spell check, please spell check this stuff, or please do not spell check this stuff. Again, for instance, password should not be spell checked, because most passwords do not resemble words. And if they do, you still don't want to do spell checking there. You want to correct the user about their passwords that are taken as they are. And also, outside from hints about the content, the input is what is the purpose. It allows you to specify also the purpose of what you're entering. For instance, this entry is for phone numbers, or this entry is for passwords, or this entry is only allows alphabetic characters and not digits, and so on and so forth. And this is, as the documentation says, is useful for on-screen keyboards, for instance. So let's say you press an input entry, and it's only meant to be used for entering phone numbers. Then the keyboard can be rearranged and presented to the user so that it only allows digits and other phone symbols, like a plus, for the country code. Or for email, for instance, it allows alphanumeric values plus the at glyph. The URL, it automatically fills out the HTTP or HTTPS and recognizes those as valid input. So all of this has to be done by the application developer. It cannot be done by toolkit, because the toolkit cannot, as much as a computer program can understand intent, the toolkit is so far removed from that it needs help from the application developer in order to send this information. So it's a bit like the accessibility information. You have to specify additional metadata for that to make sense. So it's a good thing to note. Let's see. Here the set input ends. Let's start with the purpose. For instance, if the input is only supposed to be used to input phone numbers or email addresses. The set input is it should be used. No. Death to passive voice. The passive voice should not be used. Don't use the passive voice. We should use the and here again to include additional points as to the content of anything, especially for input methods and enter now I have to use American English spelling, so I'll see. I had to do I'm not gonna say today or other days, but every time I do Wordle to guess a 5-letter word, it's the new hot game, and I end up thinking about stuff in British English instead of American English, but the game is in American English. So sometimes I just, what the hell is this word? How does it work? How can it fit there? And then I realize, oh, it has an OU inside it. So it doesn't have OU, so you have to use O. Americans and British. Two countries separated by the same language. Okay, so these two are useful and are actually a good start for the useful what else? The set activates default and the activate signal. are actually related. So we want to talk about activation of GTK entry. Which means that we want to be talking about what happens when the user presses return on their keyboard and the activation of the entry widget. But also we want to link back to the activate default so that we don't have to have a special signal handler for the activate signal if the end result is this is the equivalent to pressing a default button, for instance. So yeah, we should have a section about it instead of having a useful method. We should consistent naming. Text fields is not what we call. I cannot add HTML, right? Inside restructured text, because this is the prime use case for this. But this is valid inside Markdown, and not even all Markdown, but it's valid usually inside Markdown. But I don't think it's valid inside of a structured text. You see if I use somewhere else. No. We could do... Okay. Of course. Oh, Sphinx does use KBD tags. So... Ah, nice. It's always nice to find stuff that didn't work, but now does. So yeah, we can do KBD return. Actually, let's try it and see what happens when we do this. Documentation, tutorials, beginners, entry, HTML. Yep. Nice. Oh, this is really useful. I never ever actually thought about checking this out first, but definitely useful. So KBD gets turned into an HTML5 KBD tag. Great. Oh, this is great. I'm sure we do, yeah. Oh, this is great. We can go back inside buttons, and whenever we find an alt key, we can use KBD alt. Let's arrange And this one should go like this. Oh, this is great. This is great. And then we also have labels. Mnemonics. Yeah, instead of doing Alt plus F, we can do KBD Alt plus KBD. Oh, thank you, Noel. Yeah, and enter there as well. You are absolutely right. And I didn't even mark it. So it was very inconsistent. Nice. Okay, and another one here. Yeah, we already mentioned the activates default inside the button documentation, but it should also be documented inside the entry so that people can don't have to start from button and they can instead jump between sections. And then what we also have here, yeah. Let's see if we can also have other key mentions. No, we're fine. Oh, this is great. So let's add first tutorial beginners button, then first beginners label. Use KBD and then we can begin adding this stuff so that we don't forget about it. Yep. Yeah, let's go back to the activation. So we can do something like empty activate well. And then an example in Python. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And it's it. So if the entry also activate the default widget for the same default widget in the same window. I 7 2 get entry default 30. Okay. And yeah. So let's go back here. Entry. Ah. There we go. So activate default is simple Boolean property, so we just need to okay, we just copy this. We actually need to copy the entire example and then change a single line. And for Python, we don't even need the setter because we can use the constructor's normal form. What else is there? Ooh, the enable emoji completion. This one is useful, or might be useful. Placeholder text is another useful thing. We have to balance adding a ton of details to the beginner's page. Oh, thank you, Gunnibert, for following. And hello. Yeah, it's basically a balancing act between adding a bunch of this might be useful method and the fact that you can literally, if you go to the entry page, you have at your disposal the entirety of the API in a easy to access list with a description for everything. And also you can search stuff. So placeholder text might be useful because not everyone calls it placeholder. Not every other platform calls it placeholder. Like usually it's a hint, like a text hint or something. But for us, ints are input ints, which are completely different. So maybe adding a set, like the placeholder text would not be a bad idea because it's terminology that is it's GTK specific terminology, and it's not something that you can just, well, you can figure it out by yourself maybe, but it's also useful to give you a hand. So we can add it here. If you want to show int when the entry usually want to show when the entry is not focused. The entry is empty and not focused. You can use the GK entry placeholder text property. Basically, explain the goal and then explain how to achieve it. So we cover activation, we cover a couple of useful methods, but also we want to cover some other stuff, probably. So let's go back here. I don't want to go into visibility and visible char because while they are useful, we already have a password entry, so we don't need to deal with those. And setting icons and stuff, yeah, might be useful, but I don't know. The GTK development book. Which GTK development book? There have been a few, and they are usually very, very old. Like, Matthias Warburg. Is that the foundation of GTK development? Because that is GTK, early GTK 3. It's not even like late GTK 3, it's early GTK 3. I mean, it would be good to have it. I don't know if it would be good to have it at this point. That's the problem. That's the problem with books. Books for free software development are kind of complicated. 2 reasons. One, libraries move a lot faster than the publishing industry, and 2, there is very little money into it, which means that unless you're writing a book for a very successful framework, platform, or language, you're kind of screwed. Oh yeah, I'm sorry if the moderator bot like lands and starts removing stuff and puts you in a timeout. It's kind of aggressive, but I don't have moderators, like human moderators, so I have to be a little bit more aggressive. Otherwise, Twitch will descend upon me. But yeah, I don't know if adding a GTK 3 book at this point is going to be useful or not. The overall idea is that we're trying to move people away from GTK 3 and onto GTK 4 and libadwaita for, at the very least, for GNOME. And I'm sure other platforms using GTK will try to move away from GTK 3 as well. It's on the other hand, I would love to have a proper book on the developer documentation website, because then we can point people there, that the people that arrive on Matrix or Discourse and ask, where can I find a book? It's hard. It's a hard question. It's a hard question. Yeah, there was a lot. There wasn't a lot of material for PyGTK. It looked like a lot of material, because it was compared to every other language that didn't have a lot of stuff. These days we do have a little bit more documentation. Also, PyGTK's documentation was terrible. It was all manually curated into a massive docbook page. Docbook, I don't know, website, documentation, book. So every time you had to take the C API reference and then copy paste it into an XML monstrosity and then fix it so that it looked like Python instead of C. There was no automated step anywhere, which is one of the reasons why the introspection data also contains the documentation. We didn't want to have people essentially start from scratch all the time. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with a GTK 3 book at this point. But it would be, I don't know, useful to have a website that we can link people to, maybe. Yeah. It's also a reason why I have no idea if people will ever pay for a GTK book at this point. I mean, I know people would probably pay for a GTK book. They wouldn't pay that much. We've seen what happened with the Meson book. And we've seen what happens with books for other stuff. I'm pretty sure the only reason why Qt releases books is that corporate usually buys them. And also is a complex framework, which means a lot of people can expense it. Can expense the book from their employer. Whereas GTK doesn't. GTK is free, so there is no business case for doing that. I don't know, it's a hard question, to be quite honest, and there are no good answers there. Let's see. The completion stuff is so... GTK entry completion is terrible, and we should really have deprecated it. It's not really useful to point at it. So let's ignore it. Let's ignore it, at least temporarily. Let's ignore it. Adding icons to the entry. Oh, there's the entire buffer thing. The buffer stuff might be useful. For instance, yeah, let's... Use into buffers to share content between different Empty buffer. Let's go here. Yeah, I always forget. Okay. Yeah, we need to go back here and do this one. And then we have actually no. I'm nothing but predictable. There is an entry new with buffer, right? Yeah, new with buffer. This is kind of a stupid example, but it also doesn't really complicate anything. It immediately shows you what you're doing. Entry buffer has the normal form is and then buffer. This one should do the trick. Okay. Yeah, it's a again, it's kind of a stupid example, but let me see. I'm tweaking the bot. Okay. The bot should be a little bit less harsh, hopefully. Or at least give shorter timeouts. Yeah, what else? What else? Yeah, I'm not going to go into the text attributes because the text attributes are going to be a pain. They have to explain Pango attributes, and those are an interesting API. Did I do something with Markdown in the markup? Oh yeah, markup label here. Because GTK entry can also deal with markup. Well, no, sorry, it cannot deal with markup by itself, but it can deal with the Pango attributes, so you can have style text inside an entry. But again, it's complicated. We could use the icons and showing the icons there. But then again, it's also described, the exact functionality is described directly inside the entry description in the API reference. So there's no real need to deal with that. Yeah, so this is a good place to not stop, but it's a good initial place. The most common things are activation and a bunch of useful methods and properties. We can start from there. We need to add GTK input buffer. So let's add this. Okay. And then we can commit. Continuous section on. And then we push. Should be fine. I didn't rebase. Yeah. And while we're at it, we're also gonna create a merge request. And the first commit is actually the good. It's actually a good one. Do I have any fix-up stuff? I don't. So we can create a merge request there. Yeah. Yeah, we can start with merge request and then the overall idea is that we are going to merge it early so that by the time GNOME 42 rolls around in March, we'll already have a bunch of examples, more sections, and possibly people will start contributing the code samples in their own preferred language. Like I expect Vala developers to start adding stuff there. Yeah, I added these screenshots, but I think we'll have to spend some time and take some screenshot there. Let me check one thing. Because I saw, yeah. I saw one thing that could be useful. This is a little UI. Yeah, take a screenshot of GTK widgets. At the very least, GTK4 widgets. Which is essentially what GTK Builder tool preview does, but also dumps the screenshot. So maybe we should try it and see what happens. Let's go into sources. This is kind of what the screenshot tool from libadbyte does as well. You never know. It would be an interesting idea to modify this so that it gets additional support for additional libraries, but you'd have to deal open stuff at runtime and do weird games, and I don't know if it will work. So who knows? Who knows? Oh, the usual Rust. Yeah, ideally we can have like the UI definitions for the screenshots somewhere. Oh, I cannot find GTK. What the hell? Oh yeah, I'm inside Python environment, builder environment. So I'll have to use separate terminal and use JHBuild probably. Yeah, I'll have to finish building here. Yeah, I don't have a global installation of GTK4. I have too many development environments. And since this is not a flatpak, because it's the developer website, it doesn't exist in a contained environment. It's running on my host, and my host doesn't have GTK4 installed. I could install it. I could install the inside my base system. No, it's not Silverblue. It's sadly Ubuntu 2110. I'm going to switch back to Silverblue after Saturday, because on Saturday morning I'm giving a presentation at LCA, and I'm not going to do a distro jump right before that. I also have a new SSD that I have to install on this machine, so I'm not going to do a hardware change and a distro change with 2 days to spare. That's how accidents happen. So I'm going to wait. This weekend, after I've given the talk, I will sleep, because the talk is at 5 in the morning. And I also have to be online an hour and a half before, 5:30 in the morning. I have to be up an hour and a half before that because I have to do tech checks and a bunch of other things. So that there is enough time in case anything happened between the previous tech check, which was in December, and the conference. So yeah, I'm not gonna touch that. So I'll have to be up very early in the morning, and I'll have to have a working machine. Otherwise, the LCA organizers will hate me until the end of time. I've already changed the machine between the first tech check and the conference, the second tech check before the conference. So it's gonna be fun. Okay. Yeah, we were looking at this. The build succeeded. Let's see the output. Documentation, tutorials, beginners. Entries. Yep. And this is how it looks, which is not impressive, but good enough. I'll wait until Alan finds out that I can use KBD and then steal the style from the HIG. Actually, no, maybe they're already using it. No. Oh, let's see. Do we have anything about it? Keyboard. No. Haha. So this one is going to be useful for the design team as well. So I'll suggest to Alan to use the KBD style, and then from that I will wait until Jakub sees it, complains about the style, fixes it for the HIG, and then I'll steal back the style or the developer website. Since we use the same theme in any case. Yeah. So, yeah, Alt+F. Works fine. Works fine. So this one succeeded. Yeah, the getting started page is going to be empty for a while. I want to merge the getting started page for GTK and look at how libadwaita works there. For instance, yeah, there is no getting started yet for libadwaita, which means that I'd have to write a getting started for GK and then include some stuff there for libadwaita, but it would be very, very trivial. But I also want to include stuff like yeah, download GNOME Builder from whatever, like FlatHub, or I'm not gonna suggest GNOME Nightly, but download builder from FlatHub. Install it, and then run it, and then start a new project, a template, GNOME application, and from there, it's very easy to start there. But we also want to cater to the people that are not using Builder, those poor, desperate souls. And we want to have a document that is not strictly related to GNOME Builder. So fire up your text editor, whatever that is, and then start writing a UI. But I haven't spent a lot of time on that particular task, so I don't want to. Yeah, we do have a template repository that Christian started. I think it's GitLab. He wrote a bunch of Hello World things. I think they were on his. Maybe. Set template. No. It's like examples. No. Jesus. Okay, we still get GTK for Hello World, the getting started for GTK. This one is so... Why does the GTK guide has so much juice? Why? Jesus. This one should be the first one. Don't understand. And that 10 years old example using Fala. At the very least, there's the GAD. So this one is the original GTK book. Yeah, GTK is really old. Is the I'm not gonna say the first because both the C++ and Perl bindings appear basically at the same time from separate people. But yeah, GTK Perl and GTK are the two oldest language bindings for GTK, and they have a lot of documentation. Like, they have a lot of documentation here. Yeah, Murray did a lot of work there. To be fair, I find the C++ bindings not great. They are the first example of a language binding that tried to fix the C API, which is annoying. But also, it's interesting to note the fact that GTK has a lot of like documentation and a lot of resources and stuff like that, but it's either old stuff in terms of it covers GTK2 and early 3 at the most. But also, GTK-MM isn't widely used at all. I only know of one application that uses GTK-MM in the GNOME platform, which is it's the system monitor. And another one is the old Amazon downloader for music, which used GTK-MM, and it was super hard to actually make a package and make it work and make work on anything that wasn't Ubuntu 12.04, because they were de-eloping stuff, so things would break. Yeah, C++ people have a choice. C++ is about choice. Which means that Linux cannot be about choice, because Linux doesn't use C++. But yeah, my main issue is that C++ bindings have so much Google juice that they appear every time, and yet there's nobody answering questions about the C++ bindings. Yeah, checkmate, liberals. Yeah. So, yeah. Let's stop dithering about this stuff and just merge it. Yay, success! And yeah, we'll see what happens when the CI pipeline starts. Oh, nice. An hour and a half, and we merged the first step. Good. Good. Yeah, a bunch of commits there. We'll have to update a bunch of stuff, the CI pipeline, before I completely forget. Let's stash it. Let's close a bunch of stuff here. And then so yeah, we shouldn't use the latest Fedora image. We should use fix it to Fedora 35, so I can update this. And then we also need to update that. Okay, so so let's commit source tutorials menus. Use syntax. Then we update the readme instruction. Let's update the installation instruction. Note that we now depend on extension. And then now we can also update the CLI. Okie dokes. And we can create a new merge request to test the changes. Yeah, it's not the very latest Sphinx. I'm using 432 locally, but I want to ensure that we are running with, at the very least, how's it called? A valid baseline. Ideally, you can start by installing the latest version of Sphinx and the extensions and the theme, and you'd be fine, probably. Yeah, we still haven't fixed the issue 17. Restructure the libraries overview. Alan has been slacking. Oh, Alan. Yeah, I should double check. I'll poke him online and see if he has any ideas, because we have this attempt. It has a bunch of conflicts, so we can merge it anyway. But also we need to review it properly. Like, for instance, what is a core library and a UI library? I contend that GTK is a core library, and so is libadwaita, but they are also UI. It's always... I don't want to separate the fact that GNOME is a desktop environment. So, of course, you're going to write something that is going to be graphical in nature. If you're not, you can probably use whatever you want. But it's an obvious, it's an obvious statement. It's an obvious statement that you're going to use a GUI. So why are we constantly separating core from UI? UI is core. There is literally no point in saying, oh, if you're writing a UI, you have to use GTK. Yeah, of course. If you're writing a GNOME application, you have to use GTK. So why is the UI not the core? I would probably split something for network, for instance, and media. Like, yeah, core libraries, gsocket, Avai, libsoup. What the hell? It's not a useful split. Okay, let's merge this. I'm afraid I'll have to cut the stream a little bit short and in about 10 minutes for previous engagement, but it's gonna be fine. I think we reached a good point anyway. Let's see the CICD. Where are we with that? The branch has been merged. So if you go now to developer.gnome.org and you go to tutorials, you'll find the beginner's tutorials. And then UI components. And that's it. Again, it's a start. I don't think it will ever be entirely complete because we will add new stuff there. But it's a start. And I expect this index to be filled out by the end of the cycle. So if you want to contribute somewhere, this is a great place to start contributing. And I'm still going to be doing streams on how to write this documentation and probably other documentation as well. So this is not the last stream at all. But it's a good place to be right now in terms of showing what can be done and where we want to go. I mean, it's kind of clear the intent, I think. The structure and the examples and everything else. Yeah, I think for a start it's a good place. It's the end of the beginning, let's just say. Anyway, as I was saying, I have to cut the stream short today, but I will be back on Friday as usual. Probably not documentation. This time I want to do some development. Last week we did bug fixing, but this time I want to do some development. I want to add a new widget to libadwaita, or at the very least show how I would add a new widget to libadwaita. I want to talk to the design team as well, and see what we can do there. libadwaita released 1.0 at the end of the year, at the end of 2021, but that doesn't imply that it's complete. It was the beginning, and we are still in the feedback phase, even for GTK, because people are porting their applications now, which means that we're gonna get feedback on the API and the missing stuff, and in order to deal with that, we will have a few cycles that are shorter for our libraries, so that people have time to port the application in the next cycle as well. After all, we are mid-January. The first beta release with all the freezes in places is early February, which means we only have 2-3 weeks before the UI freeze and the API freeze for GNOME 42. But then we have GNOME 43 to think about. So we'll have to add new API everywhere to respond to the feedback, to respond to the issues that application developers found while porting their applications. Yes, will be an awesome release. GNOME 42 is going to be great. It's going to be the best GNOME release up until now. It's always good to strive for the next release, but also we need to recognize the amount of work that has been going on behind the scenes to get to where we are. So yeah, let's go back to the desktop. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Friday is gonna be development, some code writing, testing, design. Let's see what happens there. And then we'll come back to documentation writing next week, Monday and Wednesday, unless something like happens, in which case we'll shuffle around stuff and see what happens there. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and thank you for the chat. All of you are very welcome to ask questions, to raise points, raise things you want me to work on. So feel free to do that in chat. I'm always happy to answer. And then I'm going to upload this stream, the VOD, to YouTube, my YouTube channel. So if you want to always be up to date on what I do, you can subscribe to my Twitch, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment, press the like button, and again, subscribe. It helps out with the algorithm so that you can find my my videos online. And I think it's time for me to say I shall see you on Friday. Thank you everyone for sticking with me, and have a great rest of the day. Bye.